Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning back into Just Curious with Sara. Our next guest is here to talk about the power of connection and branding. He's the co-founder of Judy and the president of Command Entertainment Group. Please welcome the one and only Simon Huck. Okay, well, I want to start right out. Okay, so first of all, welcome to Just Curious with Sara. I love seeing you again. A lot has happened in your life. Now, I am super familiar with you and your story, but I want to share a little bit because there's been a journey to get to where you are today. So before we get into it, for those who don't know, how did you get to where you are today? Where are you from? Where did you start your career? What did it take to get here?
Totally. So the journey is a crazy one. I was born in Canada in Ottawa, and I went to university in a town called Kingston. And from a very early age, I was obsessed with entertainment and with celebrity, more the mechanics of celebrity. I wanted to know who the manager was. What do they do? What's the agent? And I had from age 9, I had a subscription to People Magazine and Us Weekly. And I would just scour the pages every week. And it was there that I found an article about a woman named Lizzie Grubman, who's a famous publicist in New York. And it's called her a publicity princess. And I thought that is just fabulous. I need to be a publicity prince. So I was 20 years old. I was finishing my degree in Kingston, and I picked up the phone and I called her office every single day for 3 weeks. And I said, I will do whatever it takes. I just want to work there. And they said, please stop calling. We called every day. We don't have a job. We're not hiring. We certainly aren't dealing with the immigration. This isn't happening. But if you're ever in New York and you want to meet us, we'll take the meeting. So I called my parents. I said, I got the job. I got a job interview, just not a job interview.
Well, this is a slight embellishment, but we're okay with it.
Yeah, huge embellishment, huge. Flew to New York, walked into the office. They were so confused. They're like, you actually came? And she was partners with someone named Jonathan Chebin. And they just kind of on a whim said, listen, you seem really enthusiastic. You can work here 3 days a week. You can get us lunch. You can get a coffee. You can set up meetings. And I thought at the time, I didn't know anything about PR. I grew up in Canada. PR really wasn't something that is as widely accessible. I think everyone understands the concept of publicity now, but back then it certainly wasn't what it is now. And I just said yes. And I moved a week later, and that decision changed the trajectory of my life forever.
That is such a hustle, by the way.
I'm
telling your parents, I have a job interview / I'm going to show up on the doorstep and they're going to.
Totally. No. And I often think I'm 39 now, who was that confident person who just picked up the phone and said, oh, I'll work there. And I think at the time, I never looked at it as a permanent thing. So I thought, I'll go for a month, I'll learn, I'll come back. And I think one of my biggest blessings was I landed into a job, into a field that I loved, which most people don't get that. That's a blessing.
Well, you're touching on something I say a lot of times. You didn't expect anything. So one thing I notice is, and I'm not equating our stories, but when I look back at me, it was always like, if I can get in there, I just need to take what can I take away? Not a job promise, not just some knowledge. I just need to learn a little. You teach me something and I'll go find something else. I think sometimes what's missed in younger people when you tell the hustle stories is they're like, well, we had a meeting, so let me know when a job opened. And you're like, there's an expectation there. You were doing what you loved. So you were like, I'm already up on all this stuff. I'm running around doing this on my own. So why not come work this way? That's how I always look at what I was doing. I'm like, if you don't need more and you don't expect more, you're on your way.
Yeah. And I think also at the time, just to give context, I did not come from money. I don't have this fancy background. I arrived to New York and I was on sofas. I was kind of going sofa to sofa, but that's not to say I was so excited. I didn't care that I was sleeping on a sofa. I thought I was living the most glam life ever.
Right.
I was like, I'm doing check-in at a movie premiere. What is my life? I'm 20 years old. And I didn't have social media. Social media wasn't a thing then. So I didn't really know how people were living. So there was no FOMO. I thought I was killing it.
But I love that. I love that the gratitude of just knowing you're just in the door. You didn't need to, you'd eventually run the whole place, but you didn't need to know that. You just wanted to be at the party.
I just wanted to
Metaphorical.
be at the party.
Yeah.
And I wanted to learn, like, I thought going in PR was more of event planning. I don't know
Yeah.
what the heck I thought I was going to be doing. And then I learned that it's actually just like a vast industry, and entertainment PR is one piece of a very large puzzle. And I felt so lucky that it was that puzzle that I was like really good at. Like
Yeah.
I double clicked on my superpower at a very early age, which to this day, I was talking about it with a friend last night. Like, what a blessing. Cause I have friends who are in their 40s and their 50s who
Yeah.
still haven't found what like fills them up.
Well, because you were clearly on to what you love doing and then chased, how do I hate to use the cliche, how do I get paid for it? But in a way, you were like, I'm just going to want to keep doing this. So, what
Totally.
did you study in college?
I studied political science, and
Okay,
then
me
that
too.
was my kind of bachelor degree. And then like the next step was to go to law school. Like I
Of
thought,
course.
and I did not want to go to law school. I just thought that was my talk track. I thought, okay, this is what I'm being told I should
Yep.
do. And anytime I brought up PR, everyone, all the guidance counselors, they would say, well, there's not a huge opportunity there,
Yep.
and the money there is never going to be something that's going to give you this and this and that. So I just thought, oh, okay, well, that's just not a path. And then I just thought, you know what, I'm going to ignore them. And I don't care. I'm not doing it for the money. I just want to follow what really gets me excited.
Well, you just hit the nugget, the crux of it, because I too it wasn't poli sci, it was considered government, but I considered law school thinking this is everyone, that's what you do. And a law professor told me, if you're not going to be a lawyer, don't go to law school. And the kind of chutzpah you had to say, well, I'm not going to do that. That's where you broke with the majority of people
Yeah.
swimming downstream, like is that you decided in that moment you weren't going to do it. Now, the Daily Mail has called you Hollywood's most connected man. That's awesome.
Oh, it's
Publicity
so
prince.
unfair. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Now, tell us the importance of making connections and kind of maintaining those relationships.
So I think, and on like to the first point of like Hollywood's most connected man, and I think it ties into some of these points. A lot of the people that I started my career with when I was 19, 20 years old, we were interns, we were assistants, we were all starting at the bottom together. And what happened is a lot of people, as our careers, grew and things opened up, became industry elites. They became influencers, they became celebrities over the years. And that's why it's so critical as you think about personal relationships, but also business relationships. Be kind to everyone.
Yep.
Be kind to everyone. Maintain a healthy relationship with everyone. And one of the biggest tips for me as I grew my career was I was the super connector. So if you called me and said, I'm starting a business or I'm doing this or I'm moving here, I was the one that was connecting you. Oh, you should speak to my friend Sally, who just opened this restaurant. She could maybe help you find this person. And I think nowadays I find there are some people in your life who are gatekeeping relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And gatekeeping relationships and being insecure about sharing your network.
Met those people.
We know those people, like they're all
Yeah.
around us. And for me, my success was a direct correlation to kind of opening up my world and constantly sharing and mixing people. Like we have this term mixing. We love mixing people all together, put people in a room together and share them. And it always comes back in spades. One thing too is kind of the giving and taking in any relationship, professional relationship, personal relationship. Don't be the person that's always debiting from a relationship. I have people who reach out, who want an introduction to someone. Fine, I'm happy to make it. But are you the same person who came back 3 months ago and asked for another introduction? And yet I'm kind of just sitting here, there's never that debit into the friend bank, into the business relationship. So
Right.
I think you have to be really mindful of making sure that feels like a reciprocal relationship and that you're not always on the take.
But that's also who you are, Simon, by the way.
Well, yeah, thank you. I mean, it's the Canadian in me. And it's also just feels like human nature. Like it should be a little bit even. And I have young people that I mentor who say, oh, but I don't have anything to offer these people. What am I supposed to get? that's not true. Like the smallest thing. I read an article in the New York Times, or I read an article online. I thought you would find this really interesting. I'm going to send it along with a personal note. It's the smallest things, but it's the act of thinking about a person without expectation of getting anything in return.
Absolutely. And like the way you describe it, though, it's funny. We've all met those transactional people, but I love the whole we rise together thing. When you share all of it, if you're as good as you think you are, that's not giving away secrets that could translate to someone else stealing something from you.
Yeah.
But the second part you mentioned that's so important is the connections you make when you're young. Like you did, I used to think of networking as a dirty word. And like when you describe, the people that are transactional kind of makes, it makes me feel gross when I'm around people like that. But when someone explained, and this is clearly the beauty of, I should have guessed this is how you said we started together and that's my people. It's kind of like when you organically connect with humans, they forever are networked to you. So when you're just a young kid and they have nothing to offer you, it's how you treated the people that weren't promising you, the things you're getting at these levels. It was just people you connected with.
And 100%, like I have people when I first moved, and I was, I was kind of a misfit. I had never been to New York. I didn't have access to I didn't know what Nobu was. Like I was not in the mix. And there were people who were not kind, who kind of, I would shake their hand and they certainly weren't looking in my direction. Like, and those very same people years later are the people who are trying to have dinner with you, who are bragging that they know you. Like it is the cliche, but it's just so true that like people remember. I remember, like everyone remembers. You remember who, I have people who mentored me and when I had nothing to give to them, and you just remember that kindness.
You remember both, because I'll always remember those people that I'll be talking to them and then they see someone more important and dart mid-sentence and you're like, wow, that kind of sucked a little. And you never forget that either. But
you never forget it.
Never. But why is owning you the most important thing you can do in your life?
Such a good question. When I first moved, and we just touched on it, I was in this office. A lot of the people that worked in this office were from New York City, grew up in the city, knew the restaurants, knew the places, were used to attending movie premieres. We were now at an agency that were running some of the biggest events in the city. I played it cool. First 3 months, I had poker face on. I didn't want to show that I was impressed. And I felt like an imposter because inside I was jumping through my skin. I was so excited. I was like an air traffic controller when I would get back to the apartment to be like, this was my day. I met this person. And so 3 months in, I finally kind of took it off and I said, I'm just going to be myself. And a year later, I remember Lizzie and Jonathan said, like, one of the reasons why you have done so well at this agency is your people love your enthusiasm and your excitement. You're the check-in person at a movie premiere, but you are so excited and that energy is contagious. Like the real Simon is what drew people in and is what led you to be successful in this agency, which is ridiculous because I remember night after night thinking, oh my God, I'm so like insecure being in this crazy city and not fitting in and not wanting to seem like I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. So I think the real you is always going to be the one that soars.
But that again is such a strength of yours, because when you describe it, so Canadians are way too cool for me to compare myself to them, but I'm from Iowa. And when I first came to New York, when I was 19, I knew nothing. I knew where nothing was. And becoming a page, I was excited at the simplest things. And I realized that was like a life source for me. But to decide to allow that vulnerability, because New York City is the pinnacle, maybe only next to or behind LA, of you play the part and everyone's playing the part. So when you choose to be Simon, you're the one breaking. You're saying, I am who I am, and that's going to have to be enough. And it seems so simple, but it's not common, and it's not as simple as to some people.
No, and I think social media has messed it up a little bit too, and it adds like another layer on there because you're seeing. I didn't know how everyone was living. I was kind of in my little bubble, and now on social media, I think this idea of FOMO and lifestyle and celebrity and who and this kind of curated, it's the anxiety I can imagine for people who are in their 20s. It's intense.
Oh my gosh. I'm grateful. A lot of the times we didn't have any of that.
Thank God.
Because there's a flip side. There's an empowerment to the people. I don't know if this is a great reference, but like a Justin Bieber who built himself on YouTube,
Yeah.
cutting a middleman out. You've got that brilliance, but then with it comes the second shoe drops. So,
Which we've seen with all these
yep.
stars who have grown up kind of online with us.
Yes. Now, there are two ways you can do your career. Like when you look at going out into the world, you can manifest something and hustle and work your butt off. But then you also kind of have to keep your head up and be open to opportunity and pivots.
Yes.
How much of your career was both of those things?
Greatest blessing was making that phone call and ending up at Lizzie Grubman's doorstep. And from there, constantly pivoting and figuring out what I wanted and how I wanted my life to look, and constantly taking those risks. So I think luck played a big part of it. You know, the day that I called, the day that she received me and said, okay, yes, we will hire you. On a whim, she said yes. Like, though, that's luck, right? That's there wasn't anything. She didn't know what I was going to bring to the table. But I do think the amount of chances you take is incredibly important. So constantly putting yourself in the situation where you're trying new things. I mean, I didn't start additional businesses like Judy or any of the other businesses that I've since gone on to start until I was later in my career. I regret that. I didn't do that because I was scared. I didn't know how to start a business. I knew how to be a publicist. I knew how to be a marketer, but it was way too raising capital. I don't know how to do that. I didn't go to school. That wasn't what I studied in school. So I think you have to constantly keep pushing yourself and manifesting, like, what do I want next?
Where does your resilience come from? Did you learn it or was it always in you?
I think it's something that I was ingrained from my mom at a very early age, where she just encouraged my brother and I, find whatever you love and become really good at it.
Did they ever, when you picked, because political science is like a safe major, like government to me was like we can shape this, although law school felt like the natural progression, you can do a lot of things with that kind of degree. Did you pick that on your own, or was there any pressure directly or indirectly from the world that made you think I have to do something like this?
Definitely the world. I had felt like the school that I went to, Queen's University, was very academic, and I felt like political science was just the safe bet, and kind of I remember the guidance counselor said, this will open a lot of opportunities for you. And I thought, like, I don't even know what that means. Like, what will I do with this degree?
Right.
So I just chose it, was never passionate about it, always kind of felt lackluster about it, and thought, okay, well, now what do I do? I'm 20 and I have no drive to go into this.
Yeah, but you listened to that, which so many people, that's why when you say I was scared and I didn't do my businesses till later and I regret that, I think there's another way to look at it, which is you did do it. And there are people that don't ever do it because fear is paralyzing. And to know, especially as you bank success, you're like, is this the part that's going to get me?
Well, and I think there's so many external forces that push people. I have several friends who are influencers who kind of have this beautiful life and make a ton of money. And they, to this day, will say in their close circle, like, I am deeply unhappy in the profession I chose. Like, this is not a profession. Like, I have mental health issues, and like having a life that's so public, like the Venn diagram for me doesn't make sense, but I chose this path and it's hard to get off this train because I'm already on it. Yeah. I have friends who are in finance, who are in their early 40s, very successful, bought the Hamptons home. Like, everything is like checking.
Yeah.
They're not filled up.
Yep.
They're not filled up. And if you told 22-year-old Simon, like, oh, but you're going to get the Hamptons house, you're not going to be filled up, I'd be like, are you insane? Of course, I'll be filled up in the Hamptons house. Like, it's hard to convince someone who's young that the external things don't matter.
No, because you're telling the boy who loved the movie premiere tickets he was handing out, so then you offer him the Hamptons house, he's gonna be like, do not compute, do not.
Right, totally.
Now, you are a branding and PR king, or prince, as we like to call you. Tell us the importance of that branding early on, because I think branding is something unique to people that have been successful in business, and it's something I learned a little later. Like, you got to brand it. Tell us about that.
I think if you're an influencer, or it's a product, it's a brand, it's a rebrand, whatever it is, you cannot be everything. So pick your three even two like most important attributes to what you're going to be. So if you are launching a brand, is it an eco-friend? Like, what are you?
Yeah.
And if you're an influencer, are you going to be a fashion influencer? Are you going to be a lifestyle influencer? And then is that genuine to you? Because we know now, if it's not genuine to you, if you can't live and breathe it, then you're not going to develop an audience for it. The most successful people are people who really are passionate about whatever they're talking about, whatever they're selling, whatever product they started. I think the most unsuccessful people are people when you're watching, you're like, eek, there's something here that doesn't feel like the right fit. So I think that's really important. A lot of the times I meet with people and they're like, I like this, I like this, I like this. I'm like, well, you can't like it all. You really need to hone in on like, what are your 2 or 3 key selling points?
Well, your story is the exhibit. As you're telling me that you're like, you got to find something you really want. I'm like, you're literally telling Simon's story, because it was people that had that passion, found that passion, followed it, that ended up being good. But you're right. When it's inauthentic, it will be sniffed out. And it will
be sniffed out.
Absolutely. Now, one thing I want to ask you is, you have Judy, which I'm a big fan of Judy. Tell me not only what you're working on right now, but what things are left on your horizon, maybe blocked by fear, maybe just still aspirational, that you want to do?
Yeah. So I have Judy, which I launched in 2020. And then
love Judy.
Thank you. You've been so supportive of Judy. So Sara, thank you. And then for the last 3.5, 4 years, I've been working with Kourtney Kardashian, who's a longtime friend. I've been friends with the family for 20 years, and Kourtney has been extremely passionate about the wellness space.
Yes.
Wanted to launch Lemme, which is her vitamin supplement brand, for many, many years. I'm a partner in Lemme, and I've been kind of with Kourtney along the journey for the last 3.5 years as she was developing it. And then we launched it in October, the beginning of October. So it's been incredible to have this relationship, this kind of very close friendship, and then also do a business together. So it has been amazing.
Wait, question. Since you're friends with the whole family, is there one you're closest with, or did you come in on business and knew the whole family?
It's so crazy. So when I was an assistant back when I was 20, Chloe was the personal assistant to Nicole Richie. And so we developed a friendship back then when this is 19 years ago. And Kim and I first became really close. This is before the show. Yeah. This is before she was on reality. And then, so we've really, all of us have just been really, really close and have kind of seen the evolutions of all of our careers. I remember the day that they said that they were going to go on E, and I thought, oh, well, you're going to go on E? Like, it was before reality was a thing. So it's been kind of this amazing. So
you're enmeshed. You've got them all, different storylines. Yeah. Okay. Now, one thing I also know is important to you, because we spoke about this, we talked about journaling, and between all of this, and you talk about people you've met that have the Hamptons home but aren't fulfilled. How do you find your balance, your gratitude every day?
So I don't find it every day. And I'll say that, like, right now, I'm probably in a rut of it. Okay. Like the last 3 months, I've caught myself in, like, I guess, like a rumination cycle, you would call it, where I'm like, eek, why am I waking up thinking about this? This does not matter. And you go back to bed and you wake up and you're like, you're right, it doesn't matter. But 3 hours later, that thought creeps back in. And I stopped meditating. Lemmy took over my life.
Yep.
And so I go back to my health journal and I say, okay, what are my priorities? Like, I think of meditation just like I think about going to the gym. Like, I have to put the time in, got to work out the brain, work out like the peacefulness and the alertness. So I meditated before we started the Zoom. I'm going to meditate again tomorrow. I put it in my health journal. So you kind of fall off and on. I think it's never this like linear path, but it's constantly going back to like, how do I make myself feel the best I can feel?
Well, it's also awareness, because the fact that you can stop and say, oh, I'm having these ruminating, like obsessive thoughts, I keep going there, that's observing. So you're already doing the meditation you practice. And I also think so much of the mindfulness is a discipline, and it's a choice. It's not something you arrive at or nail. It's always like getting back on the horse.
Yeah, constantly getting back on the horse, for sure.
Now, to end this, because Simon, I love talking to you and I could talk forever, but we have a just curious rapid fire questions.
Okay.
What is something that brought you joy today?
Meditating.
What do you wish you could tell your younger self?
Run towards the things that scare you. And I mean that like in a good way, like not the actual scary things, but
And
like
then the
the career
Dateline
thing.
episode ended.
Yeah. Yeah, like the career things, the life changes, the job interview, the career change at 40, whatever.
The company you create.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's on your bucket list?
Moving to Italy for a year.
Who has impacted you the most in this life?
My husband. Finding like your best friend that you marry and building a future changes every single thing you thought you cared about before.
What piece of advice lately hasn't left your mind?
Forgive constantly. Forgive the coworker who doesn't like you. Forgive the friend that you think betrayed you. Holding on to the resentment and the grudge is torture for your soul, and letting go of it is going to just make you feel incredible.
Last question. What is something you are curious about right now?
I'm really obsessing over this like chat GI. I don't even know what it's called.
Oh, yes, the chat bots, like the
Yeah.
ones
Like
that are writing college papers and rewriting
it's
like classic literature.
insane. I'm kind of obsessed with it right now. And I'm just so curious to know, like, what does it look like in 10 years for us?
Oh my gosh, it's a little scary. There may be no us.
Yeah. No, right? I know. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking of right now.
Okay, well, Simon, thank you so much for always taking the time to chat with me. Beyond all your successes, the crux of it, you only have to know you for 5 minutes to realize is just the human you are is what drove all of it. So thank you for sharing your time and all the wisdom in this.
Thank you, Sarah. You're always so sweet to me.
Because I'm a Judy now.
Yeah, you are a Judy. You are a Judy.
I am a diehard Judy.
You are a Judy.
Thank you so much, Simon. Have a great day. And I hope to talk to you again soon.
Okay. Talk to you soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Simon, for taking the time to chat with me. I really appreciate it. Big things can happen if you remain curious. How curious are you? I'll see you next time.